Okay, so welcome to the next part of an oligopolistic competition, and here now we are going to see the same. We are continuing with the kink demand curve. We're not changing the topic. We're now just going to see another theory, another point of view about why. Prices become sticky at a certain point. Why do prices become fixed at a certain point? So in this diagram, then what we are doing is we are imposing the uh, marginal cost analysis, and we are assuming here that the firm, like any normal firm in any market structure, is a profit maximizing concern. Okay, it's trying to maximize the profit. So let's look at it now. In this diagram, the change that we have made is we have made the same kinked demand curve. The demand curve is relatively elastic before the point x, and then it becomes relatively inelastic. And now we have used the more technical word for demand, which is the average revenue curve. Also, what we've done is that now we have created the marginal revenue curve. So, of course, as we know, the marginal revenue curve falls, starts to fall most steeply. It comes below the average revenue curve. However, at the point X, for a certain uh, period of time, this marginal revenue curve will become vertical. It will fall vertically. Now, why it will fall vertically, that's not part of your course, but it will fall vertically, okay, for some time. And when it falls vertically for some time, then a certain situation happens, and then it starts to fall again, fall rightward. So that is the shape that it takes. First, it falls more steeply than the average revenue curve. However, it remains, the shape remains more elastic. Then it becomes completely inelastic. It falls vertically, and then it takes the shape, which is the elastic shape. So so what do we have now? We now have to make our standard diagram, which is we will have to impose the marginal costs on uh, these curves, and then we will see why we have an incentive to maintain the price at P1. Previously we had seen that there is an incentive to maintain the price at P1. Why? Because raising it beyond P1 meant fall of market share. Reducing it below P1 meant more competition and no permanent increase in market share. Okay, and also fall in revenue. But now there is a more technical explanation, more technical reason why this should be maintained at P1. The price should be maintained at P1. Why? Because recall, what does a profit maximizer do? The profit maximizing firm wants to produce any quantity where marginal cost becomes equal to marginal revenue. Okay, so that gives us a range in which we can um, increase or decrease the marginal cost and still maintain maximum profit. Let's look at MC1. Now, what's happening at MC1? At MC1, the green line MC1 is intersecting the marginal revenue curve at the exact point where it becomes a straight line. So, what's happening here? Here, the marginal cost becomes equal to marginal revenue. Now, if you raise the dotted line from this point and you touch X, then again at P1, you will sell quantity Q1 and you will get maximum profit. Okay, so please do keep that in mind. The quantity you will produce will be Q1. Why will you produce that quantity? Because marginal cost MC1 becomes equal to the marginal revenue at that particular point. Now let's say the marginal cost falls to MC2. Now it's not at the same point where the line turns. No, it goes below. But even when it goes below that particular point, at that point again, marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, and uh, your quantity that you will produce will be Q1. And at that quantity, you will, if you charge the price P1, which you will, your profits will be maximized. And again, let's say the marginal cost falls further. So if the marginal cost falls further, again, same thing is going to happen. Your marginal cost remains equal to marginal revenue. Your point corresponding to price will be X. Quantity you will produce will be Q1. So what I'm saying is that whether your cost is MC3, MC2, or MC1, if you produce Q1, marginal cost remains equal to marginal revenue, and your profits will be at its maximum. So this is the marginal cost analysis as applied to the kink demand curve. And this marginal cost analysis once again tells us that we should not change the price from P1. Because if we change the price from P1, we will reach another point where profits will not be a maximum. Profits will not be maximized. Okay, so this is so then there are two reasons. One reason is related to reaction of the competitor, and because of that reason prices should not change from P1. And the other is the marginal cost analysis. Because your marginal cost is equal to the marginal revenue at the corresponding point X, quantity Q1 should be produced and prices should be maintained. Prices should remain sticky. Prices should remain rigid at P1. All right, so that is the analysis of this. We will now continue with um, what we were saying, and as I said, we will now have to talk about some of the limitations of this kink demand curve model, because as I said, this is not the only model that explains non-collusive behavior. Okay, this method has its shortcomings. What is the guarantee? What is the guarantee that the gap between that the gap between the marginal revenue and the marginal revenue curve will be wide enough that the marginal cost curve will pass through it? We are just assuming that if you look at the if you look at the straight part of the marginal revenue curve, this is a very big assumption. We are just assuming that the marginal cost curve is going to pass through it. What if the gap between point A and point R is not big enough? Then what? So this is based on a very big assumption that there will be a gap. One, the gap will be wide enough to allow marginal costs, and in certain cases, a range of marginal costs to pass through them. This is a very big assumption. Okay. Uh, Prices, if this gap is not wide enough, if it shortens in the marginal revenue, then price stability as a whole will be lost. Just imagine if the gap between A and R is reduced, finished, then what's going to happen? We will never get a price which is stable enough to give us maximum profits. Okay. Another thing, where does the economic theory, or where does the economic explanation for this fixed price at P1 come into existence? Yes, that they will look at the prices of one another. They will, but will it be so stable? Will it be so settled? in the real world, will things be really that settled? That may not really be the case. Okay. I mean, qualitatively speaking, why will everyone settle at one price P1? Okay, the theory does not explain that prices that have changed once should settle down and then acquire stability at that point. Where does the stability come from? Okay, so this again is not properly explained. And what forces have established the initial price? Where are those forces? What are those forces? How do those forces work together to establish that price? Okay, so in reality, the whole idea of price stability may be an illusion. So that is what we are coming at. We're just saying that the theory says that prices will be stable and the prices will be sticky, but in reality, are all prices in all oligopolistic markets sticky? Look at the market in Coca-Cola and Pepsi. They, on average, they may remain close to one mean position, but they are not exactly sticky. They do change from time to time. Okay, and do sales always take place at the list price? That's another very big question mark. If the price of Coca-Cola, let's say, is $1, and I'm going to a seven-star restaurant, will I get it at $1, which is the real price, which is the list price? No, there are deviations from the price. So uh, the whole criticism of the oligopolistic system centers around the stability assumption. What makes you think that things will be so stable? Things are not that stable in the real market. Okay. And what if outwardly the prices are the same? Okay, I don't want to change the prices. But what if I change the quantity? Okay, the price is the same, but quantity is reduced. In reality, the prices have increased. Now you are getting less quantity for the same price. So relative price has gone up. And what if the quality has been reduced? You're now not getting the same input, not the same content in the product. Okay, so is it possible for us to compile all the data and then to prove in an economic model that prices have remained stable over a period of time in an oligopolistic market? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. This is not uh, this is not statistically proven. Okay, so as we look at the King demand curve, we saw two assumptions. When prices fall, firms follow suit and start a price war. When prices rise, they will do nothing. Okay? But what happens in an inflationary period? Sometimes in an inflationary period, these prices do not remain sticky. They raise the prices. Okay? Um, uh, for whatever reason, in an inflationary period, even though there are strong oligopolies, they all raise the prices. Firms raise the prices. And this entire assumption that when prices fall, you will follow suit, and when prices rise, you won't. There is no historical evidence to prove this. Okay, price increases are not matched. That's not true. There is no historical evidence to prove this assumption, and price decreases will be matched. Again, yes, in many cases it happens, but there's nothing to prove. No consistent statistical data to prove that this is the law in the oligopolistic market. Okay, so that brings us to the end of oligopoly, and I hope this was useful. And in the next, then we are going to look at the next market structure. Okay, thank you very much indeed.